Did you know the national debt has gone up $7 trillion in the last 3 years? Obviously, the national debt is out of control. I've spent a fair amount of time researching this debt, and I know the information fairly well. Today I will discuss with you exactly how big of a problem the national debt is, what we have done to cause this debt, and steps we as a nation can take to resolve the issue. First things first, I will talk about why we should be worried about the national debt. According to the U.S. debt clock, as seen here, as of this day, November 9th, 2020, the United States national debt is at $27 trillion. Not only is this ridiculously high, but it is also rising at least $100,000 every second, or nearly every second. 6 years ago, Simon Black, in an article for Sovereign Man, stated that it would take one man 398 million years working at the standard wage to pay off our debt. He went on to say that even if every man, woman, and child in the United States were working and contributed every cent of their income for 1 year to lowering the national debt, it would still not be enough money to completely lower it. As I'm sure you're beginning to see, this is a major problem, and if we're not careful, this debt will destroy our country from the inside out. You may be asking yourself, why is this the case? What possibly could the U.S. have done to get the debt this high? Well, I'll tell you. There are a number of key reasons as to why the national debt is this high. To start, I should probably explain why there is any national debt to begin with. The national debt is the result of building up of budget deficits. Every year, the United States government spends more money than it gains. This means that every year, the U.S. has to borrow money from other countries to stay afloat. As we borrow, the national debt begins to rise. Therefore, if the U.S. keeps suffering budget deficits at the rate we currently are, the national debt will continue to rise at an astronomical rate. One of the nation's biggest expenditures that contributes to the national debt is our fledgling healthcare system. According to the Peter G. Peterson Foundation, the U.S. spends $3.6 trillion on healthcare every year. 30% of our healthcare expenditures go to ineffective or pointless programs. The results of all this spending are about as positive as the other major nations of the world, meaning we are paying far more money on our healthcare and getting the same or less out of it compared to other global powers. Another culprit pertaining to the growth of debt is the rise of life expectancy in the United States. Now that the average life expectancy has risen and will continue to rise, the government will have to spend more money on programs to help out its elderly citizens. At the same time, it is projected that a lesser amount of people will join the workforce in decades to come. This means that we will not be receiving as much tax revenue to help in paying for retirement, Social Security, or healthcare costs for our senior Americans. Obviously, this is not a problem the U.S. government can ethically solve, but it is a contributor nonetheless. Lastly, there are many other projects that the U.S. government has wasted money in funding. Here I will lay out only a few of these pointless endeavors. To start, let's talk about the Commune Project, a government project designed to convince hipsters to stop smoking. That's right, the U.S. government spent $5 million to try to get cigarettes and e-cigarettes out of the hands of the cultural elite. Shouldn't this be a concern of the private sector? Next, I'd like to discuss the number of wasted buildings that the government seems to want to hang on to. These vacant or rarely used government possessions require about $1.7 billion to operate every year. Lastly, I want to talk about a certain Super Bowl 49 advertisement. Being the most watched television event in national history, the Census Bureau decided it would be a good idea to get the word out about its services. In a display of pure irresponsibility, the Bureau spent $2.5 million in taxpayer money to run an advertisement for only 30 seconds. For these reasons and many more, the United States national debt has grown out of hand. But don't worry, there are a few things we can do to remedy the situation. The first possible solution I'd like to talk about is raising the retirement age. If we raise the retirement age, this would mean that more people would be working at any given time. This means the government would have more tax money to pull from in lowering the national debt. Another solution could be working to strengthen our economy and raising our GDP. Although this would likely be the most difficult and time-consuming solution, raising our GDP would make America more financially sound and therefore more able to pay off its debt. The third and final solution I'd like to discuss today is what I believe might be the most practical solution we have: cutting spending on these pointless projects I've discussed earlier. Altogether, these wasteful projects amount up to billions of dollars of unnecessary spending. While even this much money is nothing compared to a national debt of $27 trillion and growing, every bit can help, and I believe this might be the perfect place to start in decreasing our national debt. In conclusion, the United States national debt is a huge problem, and it needs to be given attention as quickly as possible. Despite nearly insurmountable odds, lowering the national debt is possible and worthwhile. We just have to try.